I'm going to try a little bit of an experiment tonight. I was all set to go to bed. I had my jammy jams on and I was all set to just unwind and let my mind go blank when I noticed a video response in my little thing here by a user by the name, I'm going to spell your name because I don't want to mispronounce it because I mean no disrespect. OWHEYDUSOAPSK, who made a video response not only to my video but eventually to Varmint Coyote's video from my Pedophilia F.A.Q. So I want to go through and address this person's points. The experiment is going to be, I'm going to see if I play his video, if it's going to show up on the audio for this video here, so bear with me.
Hi there, Octavio Rex.
I meant to make it Octavius Rex, probably from my dyslexia. I didn't notice that I hadn't put the S in my title, although I have on the my emailing address for this particular channel, but I let that slide because it is Octavio, so it is what it is. I'm not going to begrudge somebody for that.
Octavio, forgive me if I say that wrong. This is in response to your video called Pedophilia Activism FAQ, and your video is a response to one done by Varmint Coyote. I watched your video. I'm not positive of what your exact point was.
Seriously, I honestly don't understand where the confusion comes from here. I talked at great length about a great many topics, some of which I'll slightly elaborate on with some links, because you tried to say that I was omitting support, even though, well, I'll get to that. But the basic point is that people are going off of a biased idea of what a pedophile is, and not without caring about the reality of what a pedophile is. And as your video will go on to say, that I possibly was misrepresenting different groups that are as part of the overarching topic here, in which case I'd say that's actually odd, because you're ignoring why I conflate any of these groups here, because it's not so much me. I'm responding to society at large and how it views this topic, and how wrong it views this topic, and how this super guarded nature that you're going to be talking about in the rest of this video has led to paranoid laws that are a hammer where a scalpel is needed to precision out the people who are actually perpetrating the crimes of child rape and child molestation. I also made a point, which has been supported through and through by the series of videos on my channel in a playlist marked Pedophilia Research. I'm not trying to sound condescending. I'm just trying to say I made it very clear where my support comes from. And that's why I don't understand your video and your understanding of where my video is coming from. Because I told you, we want reforms in the sex laws that hurt some of the people we pretend that we're protecting. We want better treatment programs and some understanding, because you can come out as gay in almost every state of this country, but very rarely can you come out as gay or come out as a pedophile without there being some sort of repercussions due to preconceived notions. And I'll get into more of that as I let your video play.
Then, sort of in concert with Varmint Coyotes, sort of asking if we should be more sympathetic, maybe to the details of what pedophilia is. And one of my criticisms would be that you, like Varmint Coyote did in his video, sort of minimize the reasonable fears we should have of these people.
What reasonable fears? As Varmint pointed out, which is something that you yourself seem to ignore, we don't oftentimes find out that somebody is an offending pedophile until it's too late, until they've already offended. And the fact that the stigma exists and it does everything from take away a person's right of who they can marry, who they can't marry, where they can live. We have cities in LA that are building micro parks to try to drive out sex offenders because they assume that the sex offenders are A, dangerous and present a clear and present danger, and B, are pedophiles. That's kind of why I make the conflations I do, because it's not actually me making the conflations, but society, which if you had listened intensely to my video, with all due respect, you would have heard that point. And if you had gone to my video series, you would see where the support for that is.
And I'm not really sure what you're asking for either. But I would ask you, you say very early in the video that talking about the taking away of people's rights who haven't done anything yet. And you talk about some article that is talking about putting people in jail until they admit to the future crimes that they're going to commit. Very provocative comment, but you don't back it up with anything whatsoever.
Well, true. In my series that's on my channel page, I haven't backed that up yet, but I actually explained that if you had listened to what I had said instead of just reacting to the comment there. This was from an article that I had yet to break down because I wanted to give the article due diligence. But I guess if you're going to ask for it, the New Yorker article is down in the underbar below. There was a reason I didn't present it, but I explained why I didn't present it, and there's reason to make the claim that I had. There are people who get thrown in jail, and if it's deemed that they are still somehow a threat, even though they've served their sentence for something as mostly innocuous as viewing child pornography. Not something I agree with, but not something that I look at as being tantamount to actual child molestation or abuse. And if you're going to throw out the straw man that, oh, this child pornography leads to rape, you need to prove it, sir, because I've already addressed that in my video series on my channel page. Where's my video series? Again, I don't mean to sound condescending, but I said this I don't know how many times in my video, and it was ignored. It's on my channel page. I'm pointing to where my name should be. Look it up, and in my channel playlists, there's a playlist that explains where my material is coming from.
So I would ask you directly, what rights have been taken away from, what civil rights have been taken away from?
Well, let's try what's in the article. Civil confinement, where you can be confined to a sanitarium based off of things like readings from a plythismegraph, something that I've already talked about has no, I repeat, no scientific evidence to back up that it shows actual sexual attraction or intent. Again, to take those on as gospel, as evidence, is to be paranoid, is to have unfounded fears about this topic. Because then, in the case of the person who is featured in the article, and he's not the only one, by the way, you either admit to a crime, whether it's real or not, or you don't get treatment. And if you don't get treatment, you don't get out. And if you don't get out, you don't have your freedom. You don't have all the freedoms that a free person gets to have based off of such things as plythismegraph readings, which, as I've stated, are not scientifically accurate to gauge a person's abilities or a person's sexual interests in any meaningful way whatsoever. So there's that. And that's taking away of rights. But then when we go back to the cases that you're going to bring up later in your video, because I'll link his video down in the underbar so you can watch the rest of this. because with all due respect, not only did you miss the point of my video, you missed the talking points that did support a lot of what I was saying, or you just flat out just didn't take the time to try to check out my videos to understand the more than 6+ months worth of research I did on this topic. I didn't just wake up one day and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to advocate for a group that people don't understand and at times don't wish to understand. You say that I'm mixing up sex offenders with pedophiles. The point is not that I'm doing it. The point is that society is doing it based off of this, how did you put it, reasonable fear. And then you go on to talk about how female pedophiles are featured, but I'm going to put a link to another video down in the underbar that's an entire documentary, and it also talks about things. In fact, I'm going to put a second link, even though I shouldn't need to, because the second link I'm going to put down in the underbar is in my series. It talks about the wording that people get. Not to mention, we haven't even gotten into the factors that are in my series about how female pedophiles oftentimes get less severe coverage of their crimes, get less sentencing for the same crime as men get. And I've even, I'm going to throw in a few more links as well that show that many women's groups don't want to handle the idea of female pedophiles because men are supposed to be the aggressors. So I have support. I'm doing even more of a due diligence to you by putting it down in the underbar and asking you to please watch and check out the research yourself. And once moreover, I'm going to kindly ask that you watch my series on this to understand where I'm coming from, how this hurts everybody on every side, and how this is a witch hunt. How this is hurting innocent people simply to get the few people who we think are doing the majority of the crimes, when that's not what statistics are showing, even within prison populations. Again, the links to my video series is on my channel page. I have facts, I have figures, I have longitudinal studies, I have many other university studies, I have more than one expert, I have more than one sources. If you want to deconstruct this, you're going to have to deconstruct the research there and not just simplify what I've said and then try to say, I don't understand what you're asking for here. I'm asking for social reforms on this topic. I'm asking for people to understand what this is versus the myth that society has embraced. The myth, by the way, that society has formed laws around which does nothing, literally nothing, to reduce recidivism rates. Not to mention, a lot of these programs are laughably inept at actually treating the root causes of some people who do molest children but are not pedophiles by any stretch of the imagination. It's like we care that you're a victim until you commit a crime, and then we don't care about you anymore. We want to put you in the same camp. And going back to what I said, yes, we have a sex offender registry. Sometimes the sex offender registry doesn't say what it is or what the crime was about, or gives only a basic description, if that, of what the person actually has done. And then people, they see these little dots on a map of just sex offenders, people who could be people who had peed outside, or could be that 17-year-old who got caught with his girlfriend, and so on and so forth. And in states where they register for life, people oftentimes just hear the word sex offender and they assume that you had to have been involved with a child and will treat you as such. And as a sex offender on these fringe cases or these marginal cases that you mentioned here, these people then can't live where they want to live. They can't work where they might want to work. They have trouble finding housing for these individuals because people don't want sex offenders in their homes, or near their homes, I should say, because they don't care what they did. They don't worry about the research. They don't care what the crime was. They just care that a crime was committed. A point I've made and supported several times over in my series. Link is down on my channel page.